This was a day they had for Lefty Weisman in Cleveland. They gave him a lot of kitchen paraphernalia. And
I'll just sit down and chat with you here a little bit. Thinking of just talking to you about some good guys and some bad guys and some medium guys and in connection with the Indians. First good guy I'm going to talk about is my dad. My father was a kid with 5 grades of education, had a tough way to go, lived in Chelsea, and he quit school. Bright guy, but they had 7 kids, and he was the oldest. You know that story. And he had a corner, the intersection of Boylston Street and Massachusetts Avenue in Boston. And the long and short of it is he was befriended by the great Hall of Famer center fielder. Speaker loved my dad. My dad loved Uncle Tris. Tris said to him, Tris was with the Boston Red Sox at the time, and he told my dad that if he comes with another major league ball club, he's going to bring my dad along as his trainer. You understand, my dad didn't know beans about being a trainer, you know. In 1921, it's exactly what he did. He became, in about 1918 or 19, he became manager of the Cleveland Indians. They won the World Series for the first time in 1920. They did it once again in 1948, and that's the history, World Series history. We covered that now for the Indians. And he brings my dad along, and he went to night school at Cleveland College, worked with physicians and surgeons at University Hospital, and became known as one of the best, if not the best, trainer in organized baseball. Today, it's unheard of. You'd have to have a PhD, if not an MD, a physiology degree, something, to become a trainer of a ball club like that. And through the whole life, I was born 5 years later there, in 1926. And Dad passed away in 49, had a massive heart attack, and that was it. I was my first year of law school at the time. Anyhow, we had ball players over all the time. Vic Yelp, who I grew up with also, we've known each other for 60 plus years, since we're about 14 years old or so, 65 years old. And the guys would come over the house, and ball players, you know, my mother was a great hostess with them.
Mother was
and
fabulous.
She was something, wasn't she? And the guys would come over, and the kids would come over and get autographs and everything. They were thrilled out of their mind to meet Jim Hegan, Feller, Bob Lemon, Hank Greenberg's over. Everybody came over. It was never a problem for my mother. There was no money there, but she never had a problem with having anybody and everybody over. And I think probably the biggest lesson I learned in connection with the life in baseball is that you can have your name in headlines every day of the week. You can still be a creep. Now, there weren't many. Fundamentally, most of the guys were terrific guys, but there were a few who were really NG. I'm going to give you the champion shortly, but before that, let's talk about good guys. Good guy was like Joe Gordon, fabulous gentleman. Story, for example, Larry Doby, when he joined the club as the first black to enter the American League, following Jackie Robinson the year before, you all know. He came in the locker room. All the players were standing up. They were told to address him. Vec told everybody to stand up, meet Larry Doby, our new player. Joe Gordon extends his hand, shakes his hand, wishes him well. And they go down, though, the locker room, and the discrimination, the racism was so terrible at the time. There's barely anybody else that even put their hand out. Doby probably had a tougher time breaking in than did Jackie Robinson. Tougher. Warden Park. Anyhow, he had to go and sleep somewhere else. He couldn't get in there to have a night's sleep, stay over. Just to show you the difference in attitude. Well, Feller, who was a real good kid, came from Van Meter, Iowa. And I like to point out that he was the valedictorian of his class. He was 17 when he joined the club. I was 9, and I was bat boy for the Indians in 1936 when he joined the team, August or September of 36. Well, he was valedictorian of the class, and it was on a national radio hookup. Of course, there were 6 people in his class.
Right.
Yeah, you understand? 6. He was valedictorian, and we went out every night, and we got to the park early and throw and run and whatever together. He comes over to the house for dinner, and my mom, you know, had those, remember those tan crock dishes that you had with apple, put applesauce, you'd fill it up with a dark brown stripe, you know, around it, and then lighter brown and the rest of it. Takes this thing of applesauce, puts it down in front of fella. We got 8 people around the table. He ate the whole thing. He thought that was his portion. See? And we were all embarrassed. We didn't want to embarrass him when nobody said a word, and he just ate the whole crock of applesauce. But I'll tell you this one story, which involved, they used to play pinochle, or pinochle maybe, or poker or something, in New Orleans. They stayed at the Roosevelt Hotel down in New Orleans, where they had spring training back in the 30s or so. So they had too many guys, one guy would sit out. And one of them that sat out this time was Jim Bagby Jr., pitcher. Remember that name? Right-hander. And he had a cleft palate, unfortunately. You know what I mean? He had a cleft palate. So he gets on the phone, they're playing, but they hear him on the phone, and he calls home, and he says, Hi, sweetheart, guess who this is? Which, I mean, well, you had to be there, I guess. My dad said they all fell down off the table. It ended the whole card game that night. They could have, guess who this is? Yeah. Anyhow, coal miner guy who was manager of the Cleveland Indians. And he wrote in my autograph book. Shows you, I was probably 10 years old or 11. If you, and he had Spencerian handwriting, limited education, but such a brilliant, great guy. If your lips would keep from slips, 5 things observe with care.
Thank you, sir.
Of whom you speak, to whom you speak, and how, and when, and where. Stephen Francis O'Neill. Is that a nice one? I always remember that from my autograph book.